If we were to move forward with posting this today and we receive extensive public comment, what is the kind of the threshold for having to repost it again if we make changes at the March meeting? Or can we respond to the public comment through the changes at the March meeting and that be adopted?
Right. So there's one case on this DEFABOC. I think it's with the insurance board, but essentially if the terms change so much that there was something that wasn't contemplated or that would impose newer or higher restrictions on our licensees, that's kind of the threshold. But there is some leeway because there'd be no reason to have public comment if we weren't going to change the rules in response to that public comment. So, you know, it might just depend on what ends up coming in.
That's not an answer. Thank you.
Okay. Sarah?
Okay, so I'll kind of pick up, if y'all want to look at the chart, so what we covered right before the break was the first column, so we're gonna kind of go through the next 6 because we're gonna kind of lump some of these together because they have similar requirements and exemptions. So the next few I'm gonna kind of do simultaneously is going to be the substantially equivalent, where if the military member, spouse, applicant, veteran was licensed in another jurisdiction, was substantially equivalent licensing requirements, or they held the exact same Texas license 5 years or less. This is what we're going to kind of walk through what they need to submit for licensure. This is kind of what was already in our rules already. It's just kind of clarifying and making sure they were updated with current statute. So I don't think there was too much change. It was really just reorganizing. So here's just the same thing. We have to submit the license, supporting documentation. They're going to have that separate military license application. Just to, again, because with military, we got to make sure they have, like if they've got supporting documentation, because under these two, statute does give the commission executive director authority to waive licensing prerequisites. And so that's why it's saying, okay, if you qualify by meeting A or B, then under these two is where you can have some of your license requirements waived. Under this, you do have to, you still, I think he's, sorry, I got sidetracked, 1 second. Okay, so under here too is where you, yes, there it is you still have to undergo and pass a criminal background check. And then if you're in another jurisdiction, you also have to be in good standing. And then just kind of goes through to make sure that the person proves that they have military status. And it's kind of the same things that we've already discussed in the previous rule. Now, I do have in here that they have to comply with license renewal requirements unless it's somewhere else way by the commission. And that's because of our 651.266 statute and 0.155 that waives license renewal fees and continuing education requirements for active service members. So that's why that exception is in there. But otherwise, for a veteran or a spouse, if they fall under this session, they would still need to comply with all license renewal requirements. And this is one of those where we do have to kind of basically the rest of them from here on out are those that have to be from the moment the applicant files the application for licensure to when we issue the license, it has to be within a period of 30 days, and that's mandated by statute. Any questions on that part? Okay. And then the next part, the basis for this rule was section 55.004 in the Texas Occupations Code. That statute also gives the state agency an option to,
And I wouldn't tell you a damn thing. Now, what you got to say about that?
can someone put,
Why?
can everyone put their, if you're not speaking, can you put your microphone on mute, please?
Businessman I've been led to believe you to be. I have 5 pounds in.
This one? Okay, great, thank you. So, prior to this, the agency has not had this third alternative, to show competency under, 55.004, but, since we're doing a huge overhaul of everything else, we're throwing this in here. So basically under this is giving, if the military applicant, when I say military applicant, I'm meaning service member, veteran, or spouse, it's just gonna help. Where I'm not having to repeat those 3 terms. So, for military applicants, if they don't meet the other 2 requirements about substantially similar or like same license within the last 5 years, they could apply under this section where they can show that they are otherwise competent to receive a license. And so here it does say that they can show it by showing it any exams they've taken, any education they've had, experience. If they had an apprenticeship license in another jurisdiction or even in Texas, they can do that. And then on page 7 and 8, it kind of just outlines specific things that will be considered.
Which page?
So sorry, page 7, the bottom of page 7, and it kind of continues on the page 8. So it's just, so what we do is, sorry, let me slow down just a little bit. So we define what standard method of just demonstrating competency includes of just our normal licensure process, and that's gonna be in that. Hold on. Yeah, it's in subsection C where it says for purposes of this rule, the standard method of demonstrating competency is a specific examination, education, and our experience, including the apprenticeship license. So for example, like y'all know with general directing license, you have to get your mortuary law exam, your national, all that. So that's what we're considering your standard competency. So we're saying in lieu of doing all of that, if you can show that you otherwise meet those qualifications, here's what you can provide. And so it walks through education, continuing education, exams, training, certification, letters of good standing, letters of recommendation, work or professional experience, or in case there's something else we missed, here's the catch-all phrase of other methods approved, accepted, or required by the executive director. And so, but they can't just do word only, have to provide documentation showing that, you know, that they do have that. And then again, this is where it has, that license has to be reviewed and issued within 30 days of filing. To help with this, what I've also implemented is within 30 days, if the commission doesn't think they're qualified, then they provide notice to the applicant to let them know that we don't think this expedited version applies, and then that way they can just proceed via regular licensure procedures. And then if we do find it, then they can go ahead and get the license.
And if I could, put a bow on this, that is related to occupation code 55.004.
And it is subsection
Okay.
F, I think.
But the key thing is they're probably coming to us, with a license from another jurisdiction.
Could be, that could be one scenario like this. So prior to that, in the previous rules, when it's from another jurisdiction, that's substantially similar.
Okay.
So if they come from another jurisdiction, that may not be substantially similar, but that could be one of those scenarios.
License. Whether it's substantially similar, I'm just trying to put a
No,
bow
I
on it.
know,
Yes.
but not all the time. It could be another scenario where they're not necessarily, I think, hold on, let me,
If there's one when they're substantially similar, and another when they're.
that's
it's
the
not
next,
sus-
that's the next.
Next
rule.
one, okay.
Yes, sir.
So in this instance, they are coming with some type of licensure document.
No, sorry, the licensure document would be that, the next rule, which will go out
Oh.
regarding recognizing out-of-state licenses.
Okay.
This one is just in case they have, it's just another, like, maybe they didn't want just credit, maybe there's some other things that they would apply under this.
Because we can't issue credit, right? We established that earlier, correct?
So credit goes to that first rule. So sorry, let me. So
So let's go
credit
back to
goes right here.
203.61, because that was substantially equivalent license and previously held. If within the last 5 years, applicant, part C, right,
Mhm.
eligible to obtain a license by the commission. If they hold a current license in another jurisdiction, that's what,
Right.
right, within 5 years preceding the application date, held the same license, so again, holding a license. Applying for a license.
Yes.
Pursuant to. I don't know what that,
Which part are you at?
what that means, but,
203.6.61 D.
okay. For individuals applying for a license, including an apprenticeship license pursuant to subsection C1, the commission will determine whether.
Right, so that's what we talked earlier in the meeting about, so we created that new statute. Here's how the commission's gonna determine what other jurisdictions have substantially similar licensing requirements to Texas. So this is just saying that we're gonna use that standard in determining whether their license.
But what scenario would people fall under that don't have a license existing somewhere else in another jurisdiction?
I guess that's kind of where it also goes back to, like if,
Would be the 007.
Yes.
yeah, but maybe they don't want credit, they want certain things waived and have it clear, but then they go through the license there. We don't
Like-
have to create these.
I just, and it may, I'm just trying to understand because the first one we talked about was
Right.
somebody saying, hey, I've got 5 years of experience, I've been doing it forever, you're gonna go through and look at the training and education and find out if I can be approved to be a licensed funeral director. That was in 20360, correct?
No, that is correct. One thing might be is because in that one, like statute does say they can't have a restricted license in another jurisdiction. Under this statute, it doesn't have that same limitation, and so it could be that maybe, if they have a weather warning out or something like that, we require them to show all this other stuff if we think that they should, be issued a license. To be honest, it would, other than having another license in another jurisdiction, it'd be maybe just if they wanted to, like maybe they worked towards getting licensure in another jurisdiction, but never completed it, and so they just showed, hey, I went to school here, but I never did my casework, and so then maybe we would waive part of the
Could that
education.
fall under 203.6 also with
Mhm.
previous experience?
And couldn't they go to the mortuary school and show them, here's the work I did, and we give them the credits?
But, so we're,
The school.
I understand, no, I understand, yeah, but if they come to us, like, we are required to credit or waive it by statute if they're applying for a license.
I think first required to evaluate.
Right,
Okay.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yes, we're required to
Evaluate
evaluate.
nearby.
Okay. Because the thought is, if you say they went to a course, they finished at a school, but they didn't do their casework, right? So,
The jurisdiction didn't casework.
okay,
Since is required, but they've been funeral directing for a year and a half.
let me go back to this one, but if they're coming with a mortuary school endorsement,
Mhm.
okay, and especially if that mortuary school is accredited, we just check that off. That's a thumbs up in their corner. Okay, right, okay.
But I guess that's where this could come in, is Maria, does she already leave? Oh, you're right there. Okay, am I right that it's California that doesn't have licensing requirements?
California doesn't.
Is it, yeah.
Yeah.
So-
So
In other states,
Right, so
California
that's-
doesn't.
Right, so we're talking about, but it's all the same, right, if previous, is substantially, so they're in another jurisdiction, they're licensed there, you just wanna find out if these match up to qualify in Texas. What would really be the difference if that was, if that, like, couldn't that be reviewed in 203.60?
Well, like, bottom line, I don't know the answer to your
Okay,
question.
well, I don't, I mean, we could be, I just wanna.
No, and I appreciate that. I have not thought through all the scenarios, so I can look and see if I can get an answer for you, but off the top of my head.
What I do see different is you have, you're referencing 55.004
Mhm.
and the 0.61, and you're not referencing it. So maybe was that something?
Right, I mean, it does, so 55.004 gives,
0.6.
right,
You did 4, 5, 6, and 9, here you did 7.
so 55.004C allows a state agency to adopt rules that would establish alternate methods for a military service member, veteran spouse to demonstrate competency to meet the requirements for obtaining the license, including receiving appropriate credit for training, education, clinical and professional experience. Then, I mean, it's not too much different from 55.007. And that's, so 55.04, what I just read is the basis for this rule 203.62. And then 55.007 is the basis for 203.60. And that statute says, a state agency that issues a license shall, with respect to an applicant who is a military service member, veteran. Oh, that's why. Okay, so 55.007 in Rule 203.60 only apply to military service members or military veterans, whereas 203.62 applies to veteran spouses and members, right?
Okay.
And so it could be then for spouses, even though they're not in the military, it could be maybe credit they received in another state, or like if they were abroad and they helped with funeral directing or embalming over there, maybe something like that could be help the spouse towards getting licensed.
But ultimately, when you get 004C, it's discretionary on our part. We don't have to adopt, we may adopt.
Right, so we don't have to, correct, so the commission does not want to worry about this, we can strike this part of the rule. This was just in case there's some scenario we had not thought of, it was kind of like a catch-all. Here's one more avenue.
No, that's fine. I'm sure you put it, I'm sure you put it in there for a reason. I was just, you know, you've done the research and all that. I'm just asking. And I know we're going through this fast, so, but when it's talking about the equivalent, it's almost like we have something in place already, like if someone moves to Delaware or, you know, a different state or whatever, they,
Training education.
you know,
Right,
the
and that's
reciprocal.
right, because every state will kind of outline what theirs are, and I know we looked at some other, to remind me, we looked at some other authority that already kind of did the breakdown among the states of who requires what. So we're probably gonna go through and really look at that and then determine in-house or internally, here are the states that we know have substantially similar requirements to Texas. And so if that's true, then we can use these methods for these applicants. But if they have licenses for these other states, then they're gonna have to go through. Any other questions now? Okay, the next three are, so Rule 206. Sorry, Rule 203.63. Covers, so this is what came out of the past legislative session, Senate Bill 422. And then the third option in this rule, it comes from the federal regulation that's called a covered license, so we'll go into that a little bit more. But for state purposes, so Texas, the Senate bill that passed does require that if a military service member or spouse, so this does not apply to veterans, this only applies to service members and spouses, can have their out-of-state license recognized, and I believe it's without getting a license, but in order to do it, that they have to be licensed in another jurisdiction with substantially similar equivalent requirements, and they can't have any disciplinary actions against them. It has to be in good standing. Then they do have to provide documents to show and prove that. Then the statute also requires that this applicant has to give the commission notice that they intend to practice in funeral directing and embalming in Texas. And then before they can start practicing, they have to receive confirmation from the commission that they are authorized to practice. They can't be charged a fee to do so. They're not required to pass a criminal background check. Again, this is all per statute. This is not discretion of the commission. Now they do have to once they do start practicing, they have to comply with all commission laws governing the license. And it is only limited to the time that they are in Texas for active duty. So if they're required to relocate to Texas because of active duty orders, this is when this will come into play, and it can't go longer than 3 years. So and so they will be required to provide a copy of their active duty orders to show that you know, they're only here in Texas because of military ordering to do so, and so they would like to practice while being while stationed in Texas.
What's the, so beyond?
My guess is because they're
because they're
already in the
active?
military,
Yeah.
and they probably, that would be my guess.
So when you say service, then you mean active duty?
So it's, well, that or military spouse, so, because if, assuming they're, you know, like if
So
they're
currently
married.
if they're active duty and they need to do these duties, they don't send them to school. Or they have a GI Bill and they can go to school later.
I'm just, so this, like, this is all statute and we can't change any of this. This comes from 55.0 0041. And because that's where it's requiring them that they have to notify the applicable state agency of their intent to practice. They have to submit agency proof of their residency in the state. And a copy of their, we don't require residency in Texas in order to practice, so we don't have to do that, but they do have to provide a copy of their military ID. And they have to receive confirmation that we, as the commission, have verified their license in the other jurisdiction, and that the member spouse is authorized to engage in the business or occupation.
So if they come out of the military and they live in society for a year in civilian life and they have a criminal act and we can't check.
This wouldn't apply. This
Wouldn't apply.
right, so this is only for the term of their active duty orders.
To Commissioner Tipp's question, this is currently licensed in another jurisdiction, so they may have gone to mortuary school and been licensed in Delaware, but then they got stationed in Texas as active duty. That's where this one comes.
And then this also.
So we
has
have
to be-
substantially similar, we still have to identify.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it says that still.
So yes, ma'am. So this is only if it's from a jurisdiction with substantially similar requirements. So California would not count.
Well, there's some others as well.
Right,
Right.
right. And that's where we'll go in, like before these rules go into effect, I'm gonna work with our licensing team to make sure we get that categorized.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's same grid chart. Evaluate a reciprocal.
Right,
It's that same grid chart.
and that's what we'll be using.
Mr. Cobb.
No, so this is already set in place on this spreadsheet. Why is there so many moving parts to this?
I think I can,
Hard.
it's again,
This isn't that hard.
no, it isn't. And,
For the limited amount of people that are gonna be applying,
yes,
we're spending a ton of time on
Yes.
this.
yes. Well,
Yes.
you've done the math in the head like I have. We're talking about, maybe there are 25,000 licensees throughout the entire country. You could just imagine how many of those 25,000, Mr. Combs, are spouses. Okay, but look, you know, I have to remind myself often too. I didn't know I was really doing this a few years ago, but the legislature pretty much sets the standards for licensure. Okay, and then when that comes over to us, it's our role to get that into an enforceable format. And so you're right. It's maybe 0.000, but when we're directed by statute, we just get out.
So how are we as a group going to hone that in with what we've been given?
Okay,
Because it's very,
yes,
spaced out.
spaced out. Okay, well, one, as staff attorney said earlier this morning, we get the entire rule for the military in one spot, okay? Two, we understand that there are three groups of individuals: military spouses, military service members, military veterans, okay? And to your point, we're already doing some of this. When a military spouse comes to us now from another jurisdiction that has a license that's substantially similar, we enforce the reciprocal rule. What this is doing is giving us a time period of 30 days. Okay, so you're right. Some of this we are doing now. If it is a military service member who's on active duty and they're coming to us with a license, if they're doing it today without this, okay, and they're coming from a jurisdiction with substantially similar license requirement, it's already in rule, okay, in C1 of that particular chapter, to grant them that license, given that they have to sit for a criminal background check, they have to pass our military law exam, meaning that when Miss Maria's team dresses all that up for me, I see a board score, I see a copy, at least a copy of a certified transcript. I see where the criminal background check has been reviewed by legal. We see all that. This gives us the time period, okay? Yes, sir.
So looking at the statute, 550041,
Okay.
maybe I'm just missing it. It doesn't say that we have to waive the criminal background check. And the rule itself says that a person who gets the non-renewable 3-year license undergoes and passes a criminal history background check, but the chart here says not required to pass criminal background.
Right, there's always a
So
criminal.
we are always
Yeah,
doing the
always
criminal background
background.
check regardless of, across all of these. So I think it's,
Yes,
just because someone is a spouse of someone on active duty doesn't mean that they might not have a criminal offense.
yes, we do criminal background check.
Okay, I just was confused by that when you said that earlier, and then I looked at it and was like, where is this coming?
So that should not be in them.
Yeah.
Everybody has criminal.
All across the board, criminal background check.
Active duty
Background check.
or regardless of whether they're on active duty.
Okay. Yes, criminal background check, law test. Yes,
And again, I don't know why I had it different, because in the next one,
I'm sorry, can I just ask one quick question? I'm assuming we do, but if it's a reciprocal and they're coming from another state, you're matching it up, you still do a criminal, right? You don't take their criminal?
no, they do the criminal here in Texas. Once they become an official applicant, this is across the board, provisional, reciprocal, reinstatement. Once they, and they're not reinstatement and they're no longer in our subscription. Under the general license requirements, so we still have the general licensure requirements, and one of the general licensure requirements is a criminal background check.
Okay. We just continue.
well, hold on, here's my question, right? Because the statute doesn't say that they have to undergo a criminal background check. And I'm wondering if that's because if they were licensed in another jurisdiction, that if they did require a criminal background check, then they've already been passed. And I'm not trying to like undergo, I just want to make sure if we put that in there, we are not going beyond the authority we've been given in this 55.0041.
0041C, the military service member or military spouse shall comply with all other laws and regulations
Okay,
Yes.
applicable to the business or occupation. I would say that means a criminal
background check.
No, not having a negative criminal history, right?
okay, thank you. Okay, so yes, they'll be required to pass a criminal background. Okay, any other questions on that one? Okay. Then the next one, this is one of those options, we're not required to do it, but also in 55.0041, it says a state agency may adopt rules to provide for the issuance of a license to a military service member or spouse. And that's basically just like a 3-year license. So I'm not really, I guess the only difference we had really for that is that it's a set 3-year license. And again, they would have to pass the background checks, but there really wasn't any other requirement. Because the first one, that timeframe can fluctuate based on active duty orders, whereas this 3-year license would be a one-time, it's non-renewable. And also under, one more thing, under both of these, if the spouse gets divorced, they still are allowed to practice as a military spouse for the duration of that authorization. So that would be for both of those, but there's really no, substantially different.
So what is the benefit to the agency of issuing this license when they have a ability to practice without a license under the statute? What's the benefit to the agency of issuing this 3-year limited term license? And I'm just asking,
No,
when under the statute, it appears that they can practice without a license. I mean, it brings us under they're known to us, what they're already known to us because they gave notice of the intent to
Right.
practice.
To be honest, I think when I was looking at it, I was still under the assumption that there wouldn't be a criminal background check under the first one, and so now that I see that that's required under both. So we do not, like I said, we don't have to do this. I think the only other thing is if it might be administratively feasible to have just.
To have them
Have both
equalized with everybody
sides.
else in the system.
Yeah, but they would still be able to apply other each, so it really isn't gonna do, I don't think it's.
How
really
many,
gonna
how many
do-
people have given us notice under this statute?
Under this statute, since the statute has been in effect, it has been none. No, zero.
So we can just leave it with the one, we don't have to put in that second one if y'all don't want to,
Okay.
up to y'all.
I
I
just
don't-
want it to be
I
the
don't
least
see the
confusing
benefit
as
of it.
possible, and you guys did a lot of work on, I mean, I'm,
You're just getting
It's-
started.
making my head spin. But is least confusing as possible.
And I'm okay with just strike that part unless you think we need to keep
You can
it.
strike it.
I'm gonna strike that part. Okay, then the last.
This whole column,
Is it-
correct?
The second to the last,
column?
yes, the one that says 203.63 A to F and then subsection H.
This doesn't make sense to me.
That's
3
fine.
years.
It would be just eight.
Well, and it really, yeah,
They have a renewal in 20. They have
right.
a special 3-year license and then that's it.
Well, and
Take your
again,
livelihood
he was
away.
Like, but I thought there was no.
It just
criminal
doesn't
history.
make sense.
Yeah. Okay, then the last one is 203.63 this is where it goes per the federal law. So in your packets, that was mailed by Ms. Sparks, I included a letter from the U.S. Department of Justice that kind of outlines how, and I think it's in tab, yes, it's in tab 6. And it's towards the back. It's a letter with the US seal on it. And it's dated July 15th. It's called notification letter. So on the second page of that, it kind of goes through the overview of the new law on professional license portability. And I really just kind of use that as the outline in drafting this rule. So this is where the federal law, excuse me, the federal law has a little bit looser requirements in some ways, but tighter requirements in other ways in Texas. So to be covered under the federal law, you just have to have a license or authorization and a industry similar to funeral directing or embalming. It doesn't have to be substantially similar. It's just basically you've got the authority to practice. But unlike in Texas, you have had to have used that license or certificate during the 2 years immediately preceding your relocation to Texas. That's not a requirement under Texas law, so that's why this one's a little bit different. You still have to provide a copy of the military orders, and then you do have to be in good standing with not just the original licensing authority, but if you have any other licenses in other jurisdictions, you have to be in good standing with all those. And then it's just saying that they have to submit to the commission's authority for the duration of them practicing in Texas. This was also a little bit broader, because the Texas state law puts a 3-year maximum on the out-of-state authorization, whereas this covered license, federal law just says for the duration of the military order. So if they were stationed in Texas for 4 years, they could have this covered license for 4 years. So that's kind of basically what that last one is. One last thing to note is, right after the notification letter is and I don't think I did a good job of printing it off, but it's a news article about, I think Commissioner Albiel brought Commissioner Albiel brought it to our attention about, the Department of Justice suing TEA for failing to recognize an out-of-state license for a military spouse, and TEA lost. And so, some of the, that they are taking this seriously. And so really that's where I try to focus this last rule of based on what the DOJ's memorandum recommended. I think the only, again, for this last rule.
One more here. Under here, we say they're not required to undergo the criminal background check.
And I think that's because the DOJ didn't require that.
But I would say that if we require that of all licensees, and they have to submit to the authority, what's in the letter here, it's,
Oh,
that they have to submit to the authority of the agency, why would we want to waive that? Do you have?
I mean, I can reach out. I think I was really just trying to follow what they had. I mean, it says submit to the authority of the licensing, submit to the licensing authorities and purposes of standards of practice, discipline, and fulfillment of continuing ed requirements. So would you consider a criminal background check to fall within that?
I think it might be referring to complaints.
Yes.
And so that's, I don't know. And Helen, if you've got anything to add to, I think that was just I think that's why I didn't put it in there.
Controls guidance if they don't have to.
I have not heard any guidance stating that we shouldn't do it. You know, when we look at all of these statutes, whatever you want to call them, okay? It's about, first of all, getting the applicant in line. Can you get in line, okay? All right, to get a consideration of licensure, okay? Once that's determined that you can, then the mortuary law exam, then the criminal background check. Okay, so this is, when we talk about simplifying this cognitively, is these are methods to get in line, okay? All right, now, the general light, you have to be 18 years old. You have to have graduated from high school. You know, you don't get a free pass on that. So this is to get in line. This is to say, spouse, we understand, military spouse it is. We understand that you have to pick up at a moment's notice and move. And to the extent that you're showing up in a state with a license, a covered license, that's what the feds call it, but a license, okay? That may have some use in Texas, that you may be able to reciprocate, then we're not gonna require you to wait. Even though Miss Maria Haynes and her team is doing a very good job, I don't think anybody's waiting days and days and days. Okay, she's hiding from me now. Okay, all right. But the point is, we'll get on it in an expedited manner. Okay, but again, those general licensing requirements will still apply. That criminal background check, that mortuary law exam. We take that license. And the deal about your last column there, Ms. Hartsfield, if they're coming from a jurisdiction that does not have a license, then there's nothing to consider in that column. Okay, so yes, it's good form to go get a criminal background check. It's good form to take.
Well, just to, I mean, it requires that they are in good standing in any place where they have a license. And so my guess, without checking all 50 states, if you've had a criminal conviction, I doubt you're gonna be in good standing in the other jurisdictions.
Right, and I guess I'd like to chime in and just say, we want to be careful that we're not making it more onerous than the statute provides for. So I think we'll definitely take a look at whether another background check is required or whether the good standing provision covers that. You know, and I guess it's not really like a judgment call that we're
Whether,
making. It's
like
mostly
to
what
duplicate, right?
law either
But
allows for or not.
You kind of faded out on us volume wise, Ms. Kelly.
Right, I was just gonna say, and it's not really a, you know, a judgment or a policy decision that we're making, it's really whether statute allows for us to do that or not.
I think, well, I think what Director White is, you can see it on the first page, 48% of the respondents are having a hard time when they transition from one place to another, 21% unemployment for the spouses. So what I think the whole intent of this is to try to get people, you know, military, active duty spouses to help them when understanding that they're traveling from state to state, to help them get back working and doing what they've done in another state. I don't think, but I could be wrong, that this letter, the DOJ considered everything. I think when they said generally, that means whatever you have to do in the state of Texas, you still have to, it's like you said, you can't bypass the 18 years, you know, requirement, 18 years old. So there's still requirements that they would have to do. And I don't think they're gonna lay out all the requirements because they don't know all the requirements in the different states. So that just doesn't make sense to not have a criminal background. Even if they had one in Delaware, or even if they had one in Florida or California or wherever they're coming from.
And Commissioner Spanski, if you look at the actual 50 USC 4025A, the actual statute, the federal law, it says in A3 that they would submit to the authority of the licensing authority in the new jurisdiction for the purposes of standards of practice. And that's one of our standards of practice, is that you not have a criminal conviction, discipline and fulfillment of any continuing education requirements.
A criminal conviction related to the practice of funeral arrangement.
And that's what I just read in our rule, but that's where I wasn't sure if that is considered.
So I'm not
that's
certain
That's
that,
not for like complaints and stuff, that would be considered a standard of practice.
I would think it would be a standard of practice. We require all of our licensees
Absolutely.
to meet the standard of not having a criminal conviction related to the funeral practice. And if you get a conviction while you're a licensee, you need to report that to us. Whereas other states, you might fall through the cracks. You might not, they might be practicing here and think that they don't have to report it to Delaware or whatever state that they were in. And I'm just worried about someone falling through the cracks.
But I agree now that, like, and I forgot that they have to let us know. So it's an ongoing standard of practice. It's not a one-time.
Not just a,
Helen, with that, like, does that sound more reasonable than just that we're not necessarily exceeding statute because of it's an ongoing standard of practice?
Well, they would have to declare it on their annual or biannual renewal, is that right? And when they get a license, it would be for a 3-year period or for the time where they're stationed here. So, you know, I don't know that it's necessarily a standard of practice. I wouldn't necessarily consider the background check to be a part of that so much as the application. So, and I mean, I guess,
okay.
you know, if they.
What if we were to just require them on the form to disclose if you've had a criminal conviction? And then that's part of the notice form. And then if they have anything that isn't self-disclosed, and if they don't disclose it, then that's a basis for revoking their
How will
ability
we
to
know?
practice.
Yeah, but
If
they're
we didn't do a
already,
background check.
Yeah,
they're already in the bloodstream.
I just don't like expressly stating in G2 that an individual is not required to undergo a criminal history background check to be eligible for the authority under this subsection. And if you want to,
We can remove that and not expressly state it. It's just.
it'll be on page 10, top of it, it'll be G2. G2.
That's,
And I read that to be,
well, that's under the state requirement, so I need to change that regardless. I is the federal requirements.
I suppose, one thing to consider with these background checks is that it's another expense and cost that they have to do an outlay for. Does the TFSC use Identigo, Mr. White? Is that the
Yes.
third part? Okay.
Yes, and that's a third party, but if they fell under this, any of these, yes, ma'am.
And that cost is roughly what, $40 or $50? Is that right?
Yeah, $40-50.
The applicant pays that.
Yes, applicant
Directly.
has
Like
always
TDI
paid.
is the same thing.
Yes.
You turn it in, the application for background check, fingerprints, $50, and you pay for it yourself. So it's not a cost to the state.
So the applicants
never-
pay for,
Yeah, the criminal background check. So to your point, Ms. Kelly, they would have relief as far as an application fee and the mortuary law test.
Well, they're not required to take the mortuary law test.
they would just be able to practice without it.
So, yeah,
So they have relief there. That's what I'm saying, they have relief. You know, if you said it,
so they're exempt.
okay. So they have relief. Okay, so, yes, ma'am.
I think I was thinking, I guess with regards to 0.0041, I think we're probably covered when we can determine whether it's a substantially similar state. And so as far as substantially similar, I think we would include that they have had a background check with that.
Right. I would agree.
So I'm gonna have to dig into this federal law and what
Well,
kind of covered
as a
little bit.
pause, what
Mhm.
Commissioner Albiella was pointing to in the rule actually was under the state statute requirement. So that will be resolved once I fix that state statute. We don't mention anything about a criminal history background check under subsection I for the federal.
Mhm. Yeah,
That
no,
was my
no, I hear
mistake.
your
I-
concern.
Okay.
I just want to make
But-
sure that how we address it, we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's.
But I still would like to look into, just to make sure we're not exceeding state statute, like if it is a substantially similar out of state jurisdiction where they do require a criminal background check, I mean, then I just want to make sure we're not exceeding statutory authority by requiring them to do another one to come to Texas if they've already done it for their
Their
current.
standards could be different.
But that's really substantial, so like if you have to take a criminal.
Well, I think where some people are going with this is on a regular reciprocal. Just a regular reciprocal, not a military spouse, not a military, whatever, on a standard reciprocal. Even if you're coming from a substantially similar jurisdiction, in that chapter, you go to C1 and it says, you know, you get waived from certain requirements, but you still must submit to a criminal background check, show a passing score on the mortuary law exam of 75, which is an open book exam, okay? So that's even for a regular reciprocal. Okay, that is still there. So yes, go ahead and obviously go ahead and work with Ms. Kelly and take a look at that. You know, as soon as they turn in the application, they are an official applicant and licensure sends them.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Licensure sends them the criminal background check instructions, and that usually gets back to us within a week, okay? And so that should not be an impediment, but still, y'all just. go
Well,
take a look
no,
at it.
and I think that's why, because even though it's for the regular reciprocal, the military licensing statute is not telling us to follow our normal reciprocal procedures and just expedite those for military. So I think there was purpose in them creating this separate statute. And even though, Commissioner Albiella, again, not trying to like over everything, it just, but that subsection C where it says shall comply with all their laws and regulations applicable to the business or occupation, it's not saying the application to get into the business or occupation, but just the governance of that. So I think that still goes back to if they do get a criminal conviction, they're required to report it to us, but not that we have the authority to require them to take the criminal background check in order to get the license, because again, it's not licensed, it's just we're recognizing their out-of-state license so they can start practicing. So you have to like take this out of the mindset of this is a separate license, because it's not a separate license, it's just a recognition and authority for as long as they're here in Texas, if they're good standing in wherever jurisdiction that they are.
Everyone's good standing is a different level at
I
every
understand.
state. So I think in Texas, when that licensee walks into a funeral home establishment with a blue license, the funeral home owner assumes they have a good background, they are educated, they know what to do, they know which end of the church to be at what time. They understand these. That's what we assume because we rely on the commission for that. We can't if we're gonna take away a background check from someone that's going from a different state, and it shouldn't be difficult.
We could just have them disclose that on their notice, right?
Could we just, you said you guys were gonna.
Yeah,
look
we
at that.
can
Yeah,
table
let's just
it.
look at that and get back. I think I know what the answer is going to be. I think I know what the answer is going to be. But the answer is going to be, I just can't imagine in Texas, law and order state, right? Okay, that we would, say again.
Let's hope so.
Okay, okay. So y'all just get
If I
together
can
on
just throw something out there, I mean, they wouldn't be, out and about, if they were, convicted and serving, time for something or on probation. So I think, there's a concern, but I don't know that it's, how likely it is to actually be the case if someone is, moving freely and applying. So.
But a
I
spouse, a
understand.
member of the military is not subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, right? I mean, so I think you are creating a loophole potentially.
Well,
You have
and
spouses that are.
I mean,
and I think the
we're not
analogy,
doing.
yeah, I think the analogy would be,
Other than trying to carry out what the legislature already provided for.
that's right.
So.
And I think the analogy would be on a regular reciprocal, we could do the same thing. Okay, we could say if you're coming from a substantially similar jurisdiction on a regular reciprocal, we would do the same thing. And I don't think that's the intention. So y'all would just get together and check that out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We've kind of reached the end, right?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, of this one, yes, we have.
So where do we go from here?
I wanted to speak, Chairman, if we could, I'd like to see if we go into closed session to get a little legal advice from our general counsel.
Mhm.
Would that be possible?
Yes. Say again, Ms. Haynes? Yes, we got it.
Ms. Kelly, we're going
Yes,
to go into special
Should we go into
session,
the other room or?
and we're trying to figure out the logistics of how to do that with you.
If
can call
you,
myself.
I can call in, and then if you want to excuse anyone, who wouldn't be part of the privilege from the room, I'll go ahead. Would it be best if I called your number? Or do you want to call my number, Chairman Allen, when you are ready for me?
Mr. White, do you have her number?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I think you have to read the script.
You have to, right, we're going to, it's 140,
sorry.
140. 140.
Yes, it's 1:40 PM and I don't have the rest of the verbiage, but we are going into
Special session.
special session.
Closed.
Close session, close session.
Closed session, I'm sorry.
Executive.
Executive session,
Yes.
we'll use all the words possible.
Okay, and if y'all
Oh,
want to turn off the Zoom,
Yes, we will. Can I do it now since we don't?
and this will
Yes.
be pursuant to section 551.071 consultation with the attorney.
5.
It's recorded.
One.
You say-
Okay, it's recorded. Thank you. Glad you by me.
Sure it is.
And we're back. We do. It's 2:10 PM. We are back in public session. I guess we can use that word. Open meeting and no action was taken during our executive session time. Mr. White, I think I would suggest that staff continues to review these things and we'll go through those steps and I would suggest, you know, keep us in the loop or whatever word, where we are, because March will be here quick and, you know, public, I'm sure will, industry people looking to be reviewing and making comments. So I'd suggest that.
Okay, we will. We'll just continue to work on it.
So we're not.
No action.
Okay.
Okay, I think that wraps that up.
Okay.
And so, Mr. White.
Thank you. Commissioners, thank you so much for your service to our state and your leadership. Beginning with the executive director's report. New employee, we do have one new employee in licensing, Ms. Shauna Rogers. She comes to us, I believe, from the Texas Workforce Commission. She has been with us probably about a month and a half now, and she is doing absolutely well, working under the tutelage of Ms. Haynes. And she's been a very, very quick learner in a lot of the application processes. And I'm just very glad that she's come on board to serve on the commission in Texas in general. Going to our Senate Bill 2040 implementation update. In your booklets, you'll see the bill implementation plan and how that is progressing. I think one of the most important things to note is that we were able, with your leadership, to meet our first major implementation guideline, and that was our state anatomical advisory committee. We actually, you actually got them named and seated about a week before the requirement. They have even had their first meeting. Let me just go through those members again. Our public member, Professor Mary Mena with the San Antonio College. We have our Will Body Program, 2 representatives there, Drs. Hubbard and Dr. Carrie Gilbert. Dr. Gilbert being from the Texas Tech Health Center, Science Center in Lubbock, and Dr. Hubbard from the Texas A&M University Medical School in Bryan. Anatomical facilities, we have 2 representatives there as well. Cody Lepaski, the president of Commonwealth Institute out of Houston, and Bethany Wright with National Bioskills Laboratory in Dallas. Our non-transplant anatomical donation organizations, we have Dr. Aaron Ali, Lifetree Anatomical out of Austin, and Dylan Kimsey from Arizona. He works with Science Care. He's the regional lab director for their Coppell facility here in the state of Texas. I also want to note that one of the tasks that the committee had when they met on November 30th, they had their inaugural meeting, they had to select a chair or presiding officer. And they selected Dr. Aaron Ali with Lifetree Anatomical. And I think that's going to work very, very well because of his unique situation. He's trained in medical science here in Texas, so he knows about our Will Body programs. He is a founder of a Will Body program himself, and also of an anatomical facility, and it just overall a very, very smart guy, and was just about at every meeting legislatively in Sunset Advisory as well last year. I believe at least by today, we were waiting on two members from the advisory committee to weigh in. But we'll start looking at getting the committee together and start drafting the rules. And that could happen as soon as next week. When we finish here, I'll see, I think I'm just waiting on one more member now because one did weigh in while I was here at the meeting, and we'll get started on that. And we've told them that is probably their most important function in this near term is drafting a set of rules that they can bring to the commission for your review and eventual approval. And as always, we'll keep you in the loop on those dates. And of course, our commissioners, Mr. Chairman, are invited to those meetings. And we will have the option to do all of the advisory committee meetings online. Reviewing the bill late this fall, I did see a situation in Texas Government Code 2110 about reimbursing travel for advisory committees. It is required that for advisory committee members of any advisory committee in the state to receive reimbursement for travel, that has to be in the budget, or there has to be some type of budget authority from the legislature, maybe a rider. I had an inkling that none of that existed. We reached out to our partners in the Legislative Budget Board. They've confirmed that. We've had another meeting. Dr. Hubbard and I got on another meeting with the Legislative Budget Board to discuss that. And that budgetary discretion to reimburse advisory committee members for advisory committee functions is just not in the bill statute. It's just not in statute. So we will maintain this remote option for our advisory committee members. I know some will still want to come in person, and we're very thankful for that. Yes, sir.
Did they set up another, a time for their next meeting?
We're close.
Okay.
I'm waiting on, matter of fact, that member did call while we were in a discussion. So I just need to follow up with that one and make sure that, but it kind of looking like Wednesday, but we'll see. Okay. Based on the input of this other member. Okay. And definitely we'll keep all of you abreast of those dates so you can plan and work on your participation in those as well. Moving along with the bill implementation update. We are in the final stages of a draft of a report to the Texas legislature. That is statewide leadership in the government, in the lieutenant governor's office, the speaker's office, and the committees that have jurisdiction over our agency in the anatomical board. We should have that draft pretty much finished by this week that we can also send to you for you to look at. But primarily in that draft, you'll find out that the commission did, the staff, we laid out pretty much a timeline of how the commission really got this program. We also made a point that this commission has a history of well over 100 years of ensuring that Texas decedents are treated and cared for with respect and decency. And even though this is a very important task, a gargantuan task, we just look at this as one of those features of making sure that Texas decedents, regardless if it's only an extremity or a torso or the whole body, that it is treated with the respect and decency that it deserves, and that this commission has ensured that our licensees uphold for more than a century. So we will discuss that. We will also start laying out to the legislature some of the patterns that we're seeing, and I will discuss that more in this bill implementation update. But we're starting to see some patterns, okay, that we believe going into the future will require the legislature to consider appropriations for more staff, okay? There is a concern that I think a lot of us on the commission staff they've brought up, is that right now we have one accreditation process through the American Association of Tissue Banks for the NATOs, the non-transplant anatomical donation organizations. And we're beginning to see beginning to observe some things, okay? And we think the legislature should, going forward, should look at a process where we have a state-based accreditation process and not have that whole NATO program pretty much, that policy pretty much being driven out of an AATB out of Virginia. Okay, so that will take some legislative work. The bill went into effect on September 1. On September 1, our commission had the responsibility to register non-transplant anatomical donation organizations. On September 1, we also had the responsibility to approve and inspect anatomical facilities. Thus far, we have registered 3 NATOs: Lifetree Anatomical, Science Care, and the Anatomical Gift Registry out of Maryland. Science Care, obviously, out of Arizona. Lifetree Anatomical is based here in Texas. So the way that we're looking at this in the office now, commissioners, if a NATO has a physical presence in Texas, or a NATO, if they don't have a physical presence, but we know that they are engaging with Texas, potential Texas donors and Texas donors, we are requiring them to register with our commission. So Anatomical Gift Registry does not have a physical presence in the state, but after engaging with them and having a discussion with them, they are engaging with Texans and Texas donors. We've asked them to register, and they have registered. Anatomical facilities. Haven't been to my email over the last few hours during our visit here this morning, but as of now, we have 38 anatomical facilities that over the next several weeks that we will have to get out and inspect and finish their approval process. And this is one of the points that we discuss in the quarterly report to legislative leadership in this state. When I look through applications of anatomical facilities, of course, we're seeing applications of what we would consider a traditional anatomical facility, where there's some type of testing or research conducted. We're also looking at applications, commissioners, and we're seeing doctors' offices that are requesting tissue and specimens from NATOs from around the country. Okay, now let me do a footnote. Recently, I got a list of all the NATOs in the country, and I sent them a very forthright letter telling them that we have this new bill. There are criminal offenses involved with the bill if certain things are not followed. And with that, those NATOs are working with us as they're working with their customers, the anatomical facilities, in making sure that they apply for approval with us. So to that point, when I'm looking at device testing facilities, I'm looking at traditional research labs, I'm looking at doctors' offices. When I'm talking to members of the legislature right now, I'm letting them know that almost any dentist, office, doctor's office, chiropractor's office, or any other anatomical facility is potentially under our regulatory purview if they are accepting tissue and or specimens from NATOs. And it's just a pattern that I'm seeing. You know, I was on the phone late last week with a medical doctor that's actually doing testing, getting prepared for surgery at his office. Okay, well, if that's going to occur, that is an anatomical facility that we need to get an application on, eventually go out and inspect and approve that facility. So I think that was probably underestimation in a lot of folks in drafting this legislation. As far as an administrative update involved with this, any administrative updates. So we're operating under the current state anatomical board rules. We're operating under their rules. Under their rules, once they get an application from an anatomical facility, the rules give themselves, now us right now until we promulgate new rules, gives us 60 days to get out there and look at that anatomical facility. So we're closing in. We're kind of over the 30-day limit on some. So we're closing in on that. And we've been working with Dr. Hubbard and some of his colleagues at the anatomical board to come up with some other ways where they can also help us in lieu of training and closing the delta on getting those facilities inspected throughout the state. I think our most important challenge coming up in the next quarter and throughout the next fiscal year is the technology piece. HPC will really start working on that technology piece in earnest in March. And they know that needs to be finished in early to mid-summer. They're already getting documents and information from the anatomical board so they can start ascertaining just what the information transfer will be, okay? But that will be a very, very critical part of this transition is this technology piece. And HPC is great. They have almost automated all of our application processes except for a few. And I have the fullest confidence that they'll have us in the right spot before September 1st. And of course, by the end of February 2024, we'll have another quarterly report forthcoming. So that's a overview of the Senate Bill 2040 implementation update. Before I move into the International Conference of Funeral Examiners Board agenda item, I will just pause right here to see if there are any questions from our commissioners, Mr. Chair.
How are we inspecting? Who is inspecting?
Yes, thank you for that question. So we have already had one inspection of a temporary facility, okay? And I say temporary because this particular event or training event for a few hundred doctors was occurring at the Gaylord up in North Texas. In that scenario, I had two of our inspectors, Mr. Bast and Mr. Jewell Hamrick, along with two inspectors, Dr. Hubbard and Dr. Reeves. Dr. Hubbard drove from Bryan, Dr. Reeves is in North Texas. So as of right now, we are doing the inspections in concert with the State Anatomical Board just to get that competency up at this time. Some of the things that Dr. Hubbard and I have talked about when he was here last week is with the monies that are appropriated to us, that are being transferred to us from the Texas Funeral Service Commission, from the Anatomical Board. It's the thought that we can also work with some of their inspectors, some of which are funeral directors. And bring them on board on contract basis to work with us, to look at these facilities and learn more about the inspection.
So moving forward, am I right in saying 2040 was, we had the provision to hire 4 or 5?
We had the
Am I
provision to hire 4 more FTEs. Those FTEs, as expressed in our fiscal note, staff attorney,
Mhm.
another inspector, investigator, and a licensing specialist. Also in our base budget, if you remember, we had another FTE requirement that we went to 12 from 11 in the base budget, and that was another investigator. Right now, and this is why we're looking at these other models of using some of that inspector money to work with current anatomical board inspectors to help us, because the last fiscal note had our technology cost at 100,000. After September 1, HPC sent me another number, and that other number was 172,000. Okay, so if you go back and look at the fiscal note, there's about 79,000. When you look at the salary and the benefits, there's 79,000 in it with an inspector. Okay, so what Dr. Hubbard and I are looking at is using some of their inspectors along with our inspectors and paying their inspectors, the SAB inspectors, on a contract basis. Okay, so we can make sure we have enough money freed up to absorb that additional 72,000, Mr. Commissioner, until I can get back into the appropriation process.
Okay. How is our availability with advisory?
Look, I think it's about as tough as any committee or commission. You know, this is not their job, you know, so we're getting good feedback whenever we ask questions. We get immediate feedback. So like I said, when I close the deal with this one member, we'll see where we are as far as scheduling next week for an advisory committee meeting to work on our rules.
Yeah, during the interview process, I know that was a big deal that we hit on, was the availability of that, because we knew that this would be a task.
Mhm.
So.
Okay.
All right. Go to the next one.
Okay. Next agenda item, the International Conference of Funeral Examiners Board. They're having their annual meeting February 27th through the 29th, 2024, excuse me, that's next February coming up in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Now, upon receiving their documentation and notice of that, I think they sent it last year. I didn't pay much attention to it, okay, with everything we had going on, but.
Sure, I made a comment.
Okay. But what I did notice though is when you look at their bylaws, the commissioners, you know, the different boards that make up their board, and our board is a member board, okay? So the commissioner is supposed to determine, one, if you want to send someone, okay? And two, who that should be. Now, they do offer a reimbursement for travel. When I saw that, and anytime there's like reimbursements, money flying around, I usually try to ask 2 or 3 other people. So when I saw that, I reached out to our general counsel, and you know, she stated that we would probably run afoul of our state statutes and rules if we were to take a reimbursement for travel from the conference, we call it for short. So so with that, I just wanted to bring it to you, okay? One, for you to make the decision, and then we'll live with it from there.
Commissioners, somebody.
What do you think the benefit is for the commission to send someone to the conference?
Okay, well, I'm not necessarily, trying to make a case for the conference necessarily, but we are a member. We do pay dues. And the idea is that, we are Texas. And, I haven't really looked at any data, but I get a sense that, the size of our state, a lot of our provisionals, we probably lead the country or in one of the top states in the country that have, our provisionals sit for this exam. And to the extent that they are making decisions, a policy that could affect, our commission, and our potential licensees, I think that would be one reason, okay? Now, I will tell you, as far as what goes on in the office, if nobody, was to attend Commissioner Tips, I don't know, we just keep clicking along. I think I've proven that because nobody went last year, okay?
Always done. Now,
Okay.
do we run any risk of having an opinion at those type of things as a commission? And when you say our voices need to be heard, is that something more from like the Texas Association or an educational board or the schools?
Thank you for that. Yes, ma'am. Well, the way they structure it is each member board, so this is the member board, sends one delegate. Now you can send more, okay? You send one delegate, okay? And obviously if there's a delegate and their proposals put forward, obviously there will be voting and that sort of thing going on.
I just didn't know if we could do that as a commission. I know about like other associations and schools and everything. I just didn't know as a commission if we could do that.
Okay. Understood.
And didn't you share that, any commissioner?
Yes, in the past, I've reached out to, I think, other executive directors, and executive director. In the past, there've been scenarios where, the executive director and another commissioner, and any commissioner, will attend. But again, doing my due diligence, you are a member board, okay? And I have to just bring it to you. Do you want to send someone? Okay. 2, if you don't want to send someone, I don't think anything changes in the office. We still keep recording the scores. If they're 75 and over, there's a certain situation that happens if you are an applicant. If it's under 75, obviously there's another situation that may happen. But if you do want to, I mean, that's the discretion of the board.
What's the date on that?
February 27th through 29th.
Yes, sir. February 27th through 29th.
So a 3-day conference?
Yes, sir.
So what's that look like?
I mean, you almost have to,
Does
what's
that,
the, how much, what would the cost be?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I have enough information to say
Yay or nay?
yay or nay.
Okay, well, air travel there and back, boarding,
Food and beverage.
yes.
My problem is I just don't know what the benefit would be, to
Okay.
be real honest. Trying to run it through my head and I just can't see what the benefit would be. I think last year or the year before, they had sent out applications if any of us wanted to sit on their, I don't know if it's their board or advisory board. But as far as attending the conference, I don't know if that would give us enough of a voice to make it worthwhile.
We also don't want to waste your time or someone else's on the commission. What do you see as the benefit? Maybe something we're not seeing.
Myself, I don't see it changing my trajectory in the office based on what we do according to rules, okay? Yeah, I mean, as far as when we get board scores, how we respond to those, that sort of thing. As far as the exam itself, We know that's a totally different process where they, you know, how they validate their exam, okay? But again, like I said, I didn't bring it to you last year. And nothing changed in the commission but it did say, you know, this is the discretion of the, not for me just to sit in the office and say, I don't think this matters, so I'm not gonna bring it up at the next commission meeting.
So basically your representation of Texas and what we're doing, if you attend that, that's pretty much what that is. And
On the education side.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I appreciate your transparency. and-
yeah.
I mean, yeah, so no, I don't.
No need for a junket. There's no need for, right?
Yes. Okay, all right,
I
got it.
think we're
We're good, we're good, we're good.
okay. Let's move. Number 9.
Okay,
Let's get
now
that
we're into
done.
our quarterly reports. I believe our first one is Jock Noe and Bama, our financial report. Thank you, sir, for being here.
What number is that?
That's number 9. 8.
Have eight in my.
Go ahead, we're talking, we'll listen.
Good afternoon,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and dear colleagues, it's a pleasure for meeting you again on this session. I'm here to present the financial report for the fourth quarter fiscal year 2023. We usually have 2 tables. One is for the year-to-date, that is for the whole year, and the second table is for the fourth quarter. That is to separate and make kind of comparison if we want to see how much money we spend for that particular quarter. This report is for the fiscal year, the whole fiscal year 2023, that started on September 1, 2022, and that ended August 31st, 2023. For the whole operating budget we received that year, 2023,
Okay.
we received,
Our meetings lasted too long. Yeah.
we,
So home.
we received $875,156, and that money was given to us within 3 of our strategies. But the other strategy, which is 13007, is amount of money that is other money that we receive to pay for the electronic transfer, is that money that we receive for submission fees. So for the whole year, out of the $875,156, we spent $759,294, 59 cents. That is a percentage of 87 out of the 100, meaning that we were within our budget. For each strategy, we can see that for the licensing, we spend 80%. For the inspection, we spend 90%. For compliance, we spend 92%. Because the year ended and we did not use all the monies. We had to lapse some money. Although we still have some encumbrances that we are waiting to receive some invoices, but we lapsed the money. Is better than going over the budget, so we were within the budget. if you will have any question, let me jump to the quarterly budgeted expense. For that particular quarter, the fourth quarter, we spent the total amount of 11% only. 11% because we had already paid all of our invoices, and a few invoices were still awaited. So that is how we ended the year on our operating budget. We are now on a different fiscal year, but this was the fiscal year 2023. So if you have any questions, I'm ready to respond, or Mr. White can respond to those.
Any questions, Commissioner? Let's see.
I can say thank you.
Thank you.
Very good job.
Appreciate it. All right, next.
Is licensing report.
Okay.
Ms. Haynes, thank you, ma'am.
All right, good afternoon, commissioners and the public. Today I will be presenting the licensing report for the first quarter. So before I begin, I would like to explain the categories used for this report. Open for this report will be pending applications for this quarter. Applications can be pending for many reasons outside the control of the commission. For an example, it could be a mortuary transcript that it's pending. Maybe we're waiting on the background. So applications do remain open until the applicant has successfully submitted all licensure requirements. Once all the requirements are submitted and meet the requirements for licensure, then the applications can be approved. As you can see, an application can be open in one quarter and may be approved in a different quarter. Any questions? Okay. Then for the first quarter report, we have, for provisionals, we have 121 applications open and 124 were approved. Provisionals 1018 will be your educational waivers. We had 0 this quarter. However, 5 were approved. Upgrade to individuals, we have 43 applications that were open and 33 were approved. Reciprocals, 5 applications were open, 1 was approved. Active renewals, individuals, 653 were open and 399 were approved. Inactive renewal individuals, 29 were open and 18 were approved. For the provisional renewals, 133 were open and 28 were approved. Now, establishments, commercial embalming, initial applications, 2 were open, 1 was approved. Initial funeral home establishments, 22 were open and 15 were approved. Establishment renewals, 386 were open and 285 were approved. The initial crematories, 2 applications were open and 2 were approved. For crematory renewals, 46 applications were open and 30 of them were approved. Okay. Any questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Maria, who's gonna speak?
Technology in the TFSC
That's really
website,
quick.
yes, right.
So we have been working on getting some updates to the website. One of the updates is to put a link of how to use our guide. And that gives the applicant a guide as to what they need to do, what process do they need to do. So right now we have, if you want to create an account, that user guide will actually give you the pictures of what the steps are and what should you be looking at to go through that process. if you want to apply for a provisional and this online, then it kind of gets you there and give you the steps, more of a visual steps as to what window it is, how, if we need to clarify some of the wording, then it can go through that process. We're doing this to see if maybe we can minimize some of our calls in regards to that and just give them the opportunity to go through that process before they contact us.
Amen.
So another one, it's we have a YouTube channel now for Texas Funeral Service Commission. And we're putting all our videos, previous meetings as within a date of the meeting, we're actually put it in there. Now, we will have the link on our website for people to go back and review previous meetings as well. Any questions?
Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez, compliance and enforcement.
There we go.
Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. In your books, I provided your report for your review. For this quarter, we did close 90 cases. Mr. White asked me to spell out a little bit in more detail where the cases are in the open section. So I have that there for you as well. And wanted to know if you had any questions for me.
I think it's great that you managed to keep the backlog from increasing, right? And close 90 cases in this quarter. That's significant. And I just want to thank you for trying to get these done in a timely manner. It's tough, I know, because you're relying on other people to submit materials.
You know, a lot of this has been with Mr. White's assistance, and his availability has always been outstanding. And so we're always able to go to him and talk through the cases, and that's been very helpful.
Any further questions? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Inspection, Mr. Kyle Bass.
Yes.
Everybody have the,
Yes, oh, well, sure.
the last time I didn't run. I can say howdy friends, cause I'm a friend. But what's weird about this year, this fiscal, this quarter, is James gave me a ultimatum to do 250. And I can't believe I hit it on the. I mean, it could have been over, which I'd have liked a lot more, but, or under. But it hit, right, he said 250 and that's with Jewel also,
And Rudy.
and Rudy. So come on, questions. Y'all don't know how
I
to
think
do
we're
it.
pretty happy. You
I
know,
mean, just be safe out there. That's all I,
Yes.
especially as we move into this winter season, as the weather degrades in certain parts of this state.
Well, I'm done with the panhandle.
Okay, good.
They went out, knocked that out early, what, late summer? They did.
I'd like to, but Rudy took over that.
Wow. Looks like Rudy needs some more inspections. He only got 15 done.
Yeah, and, but you know, he is helping with investigation.
Yeah, and he pretty much will get out and help out along in South Texas.
And Jill's starting to travel.
Excellent work.
And how long has Joe been on?
Jill did Houston, this quarter, I'd say about halfway into it. He started traveling, he's fixing to do, he did like Baytown stuff surrounding Houston. And now I got him going to Dallas, so. Which helps him.
Yeah.
All
All right,
right,
anything else? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
we have a legal report.
So we just have, just gonna update on our, two cases that have been set for a SOA hearing. The first one is, Texas Funeral Service Commission versus Ollinger's and Liquor Service. And then you'll see the docket number in the agenda, but that is set for February 13th next year. And then the second case, Texas Funeral Service Commission versus Unique Green, also SOA dockets in the agenda, that is set for April 23rd next year. Yeah.
Any questions on those?
I didn't see the petition for the illegal. That was just kind of like how to prepare for the case.
I don't know, I need to check with our council what can be provided. I know I can get you I could probably get a copy of what was filed to. Like, the
Right, kind
complaint
of
that
like
was-
this one, that's,
I don't see what that is. I'm sorry, you can see that.
I was just curious because we have two different things, like that one. Which
Okay.
is how to prepare for the case, and this one was.
I will double check to make sure. So we'll send everyone an email subsequent with that.
One thing that I think bears pointing out at this meeting is I had a respondent that emailed my personal email, and looks like the rest of the commission was also, their personal email addresses were on it. I don't think that's appropriate, and I think that needs to bear mentioning that, you know, as a body that respondents should refrain from reaching out ex parte to commission members. Yeah, we realize that you're going through the process, but that's really not something that I think is appropriate. And I think respondents need to know that that isn't appropriate, at least in my opinion. And I
If I
forwarded
can
it
jump
to-
in. We
Yes, ma'am.
responded to the respondent and we let them know that per the commission's rules that there shouldn't be any ex parte communication with the commissioners.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And it creates open records issues because it was sent to my personal email, so I had to then forward it to my commission email so that we could preserve that. Just, it's all around not a good idea.
All right, next item. Election of assistant presiding officer for the next year, and Commissioner Sapansky has indicated he's willing to serve in that position again. Is there a motion?
I'll move that we nominate Commissioner Stefanski for that position.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Heffley. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then motion passes. Thank you for accepting that again.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Y'all done a lot of work. To say it last. Okay, recommendations for agenda items. Is there anything off the top of your head? Sure we do, but we'll talk to you, Mr. White. Okay. And last item of discussion of date, time and location. I assume we're gonna meet here from now on.
Yes, and I believe, Mr. Chairman, I've sent out scheduling sheets for the next year. And so I think one or two commissioners have already submitted them. I'll resend those, but it's just so we can just go ahead and get the next 4 meetings scheduled up. Yes, sir.
Okay. And last item, adjourned. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
A motion made and a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion passed. We're adjourned. Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, I'll leave it right now.
Yeah, we're gonna be 8 hours.